The city lights sparkled against the night sky, tall glass towers standing like silent guardians over the streets below. In one of those towers, on the very top floor, sat a man who seemed to have everything. His name was Armin, a young billionaire who had built an empire with his own hard work. Expensive suits, luxury cars, and people constantly praising him had become his daily life. To the world, he was a symbol of success, but deep inside, he carried an emptiness that money could never fill. Armin leaned back in his leather chair, staring out through the floor-to-ceiling window. His office was filled with awards, business trophies, and photographs from charity events, but none of them made him feel proud anymore. Somewhere inside, he always felt something was missing. It wasn't wealth. It wasn't power. It was something far simpler, something he had lost many years ago. Every now and then, in the quiet of the night, he thought of her. Mehar. The only girl he had ever loved truly. She was the one who had stood by him when he had nothing, the one who had dreamed with him when the world laughed at his failures. But fate had separated them. Arguments, misunderstandings, and life's cruel timings had pulled them apart. He had gone on to build an empire, while she had vanished from his life completely. Armin had tried to move on. He had met many people, attended glamorous parties, even traveled the world, but whenever he saw couples walking hand in hand, a memory of Mehar struck his heart like a knife. She had been gentle, full of dreams, with a smile that could brighten the darkest day. And yet, she was gone. That night, after finishing a long meeting, Armin decided to take a drive through the city. Sometimes he liked watching the streets, the normal life of people walking, buying food, or laughing with friends. It reminded him of the days when he was ordinary, struggling to make ends meet, but filled with simple happiness. As his car moved slowly through a quieter street, his eyes caught something unusual. By the corner, near an old bakery shop, he noticed a group of homeless people huddled together. Some sat on broken cardboard, others wrapped themselves in thin blankets. Normally, he would have looked away, but something about one figure froze him. A woman sat apart from the group, her head bowed, her clothes old and worn. Her hair was messy, and she hugged her knees as if trying to hide from the world. For a moment, Armin's heart skipped a beat. There was something about the curve of her face, the way she held herself, that felt painfully familiar. His driver asked softly, "Sir, should I keep driving?" But Armin shook his head. His eyes remained locked on the woman. He leaned forward, staring harder, his chest tightening. No, it couldn't be. His mind told him it was impossible. How could someone who once dreamed of the stars end up like this? Yet, as the car drew closer and the street light cast its glow, his doubts disappeared. It was her. Mehar. The name screamed inside his mind. The woman sitting alone on the cold street was the same girl who had once promised to be by his side forever. The same girl he had loved more than anything. The same girl he had lost. Armin's hands trembled. For years, he had searched her face in crowds, in memories, in photographs he could no longer find. And now, when he least expected it, she appeared before him broken, homeless, and almost unrecognizable. The driver looked at him again, unsure. "Sir, are you okay?" But Armin didn't answer. His throat had gone dry. His heart was pounding louder than ever. He opened the door slowly, his expensive shoes touching the wet pavement. The night air was cold, yet he felt sweat forming on his forehead. Each step toward her felt heavy, as if the weight of years pressed down on him. He stood only a few feet away now. She still hadn't noticed him. She was staring at the ground, her eyes distant, as if she had given up on hope. For a long moment, Armin couldn't speak. He just looked at her, remembering the way she used to laugh, the way her eyes once shined with dreams. Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said her name. "Mehar, The sound of her name from his lips broke the silence. She slowly lifted her head, her tired eyes meeting his. There was shock, confusion, and a flicker of recognition. But more than that, there was pain, deep pain that words could not describe. Armin felt his chest tighten, as if 1,000 unspoken regrets rushed back all at once. At that moment, he realized one truth: wealth, success, and the entire empire he had built meant nothing if the person he had loved the most had ended up here, on the streets. And so began a story he never thought life would write for him again. The street was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic. Armin stood frozen, staring at Mehar as if the world around him had disappeared. The woman who had once filled his life with hope was now sitting on the cold pavement, wrapped in a worn shawl, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them felt heavier than the years that had passed. Mehar was the first to lower her eyes again. She pulled her shawl tighter, almost as if she wished to disappear. It was as though she had recognized him but did not want to admit it. Her silence cut deeper than any words could. Armin finally found the courage to step closer. His voice trembled. "Mehar, it's really you." She did not answer. Her hands fidgeted nervously, her body stiff. For her, this moment was not only shocking but also painful. Seeing him again brought back memories she had buried long ago, memories of love, arguments, and dreams that never came true. Armin crouched slightly, lowering himself so he could look into her face. "What happened to you? How did you end up here?" His words were filled with concern, but also guilt, as if he had failed her somehow. Finally, Mehar lifted her eyes, and for a second he saw the same spark he remembered from years ago. But it was quickly covered by bitterness. "Why do you care, Armin? You left me behind a long time ago. My life stopped when yours began." Her words pierced his heart. He opened his mouth to explain, but nothing came out. He had imagined meeting her again many times, but never like this. Never with her sitting on the street while he stood in an expensive suit. "Mehar, please, don't say that," he whispered. "I never forgot you. I thought you were living your own life, happy somewhere. I never imagined." His voice broke. Mehar let out a tired laugh, but it was bitter rather than joyful. "Happy? Do I look happy to you?" Her voice shook with hidden tears. "The world is not the same for everyone, Armin. Some people climb higher, while others keep falling. I guess I kept falling." Her words left him speechless. Armin felt anger not at her, but at himself. He thought of the nights he had spent building his empire, chasing deals, fighting for respect in the business world. He had been so focused on success that he never looked back to search for her properly. If he had tried harder, maybe this moment would not exist. He lowered his gaze. "I'm sorry, Mehar. I don't know how to fix the past, but please, let me help you now. You don't belong here." Her face hardened. "And what will people say? That a billionaire picked up a broken woman from the street out of pity? No, Armin. I don't need your charity." Her pride was still there, strong as ever. Even in the worst of times, she held on to her dignity. That was one of the things he had always admired about her. But in this moment, it created a wall between them. Armin's chest ached. He wanted to reach out, to take her hand, to tell her that it wasn't charity, it was love, it was regret, it was the desperate desire to protect her from further pain. But her eyes warned him not to cross the line. The driver, standing near the car, looked confused but remained silent. Passers-by occasionally glanced at the scene, curious about why a wealthy man in an expensive suit was speaking to a homeless woman. The city's indifference surrounded them, but for Armin, the world had shrunk to just the two of them. "Please," Armin said softly, his voice almost breaking. "At least tell me how you ended up here. I deserve to know the truth." Mehar sighed deeply. For a moment, it seemed as though she would ignore him. But then her shoulders slumped, as if the weight she had been carrying was too heavy to hide anymore. "It doesn't matter," she said quietly. "Life is cruel sometimes. Dreams don't always come true. I made choices, some good, some bad. And here I am." Her voice cracked, but she quickly wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, refusing to show weakness. Armin felt his throat tighten. He wanted to ask more, but he could see she was not ready to share everything. Forcing her would only push her further away. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a card. "This is my number. If you ever need me anytime just call." He placed the card gently near her, careful not to touch her without permission. Mehar glanced at it but did not pick it up. Her silence was an answer in itself. Armin stood there for a few more seconds, fighting with himself. Part of him wanted to insist, to lift her from the ground and take her with him right away. But the other part knew that love was not about force. It was about patience. Finally, he stepped back. His heart felt heavier than ever, but he knew this was not the end. Seeing her again had awakened something inside him that would not let him rest until she was safe. As he walked back to his car, he looked over his shoulder one last time. Mehar was still sitting there, her eyes distant, her body wrapped in the shawl. She looked fragile, yet strong in her silence. Armin's chest burned with determination. He whispered to himself, "I lost her once. I will not lose her again." The car drove away, but his mind stayed with her. That night, for the first time in years, Armin's empire felt meaningless. All he could think of was the girl on the street, the girl who had once been his whole world. Armin sat in his study late into the night, the city lights glowing through the wide glass window. His mind replayed every moment of what had happened just hours ago. He had seen Mehar again, but not in the way he had ever imagined. She was not the bright girl he remembered, she was a shadow of her old self, sitting on a cold street corner. The picture of her wouldn't leave his thoughts, no matter how hard he tried. His heart ached, and memories of their past came rushing back like waves crashing against the shore. Years ago, Armin had been a very different man. He was not a billionaire then. He was just a young man with dreams that seemed too big for the world around him. He had worked in a small office, earning enough only to cover rent and food. His clothes were plain, his shoes worn, but his spirit was strong. And during those days of struggle, Mehar had been his greatest strength. They had met at a local library. She had been sitting by the window, reading a book with full attention, her long hair falling gently on her face. Armin had walked in looking for business books, and when he saw her, something inside him paused. Her smile, when she looked up, had been so warm that he forgot every worry for a moment. From that day, their bond grew quickly. Mehar admired his determination and the fire in his eyes, while Armin was drawn to her kindness and her ability to see beauty even in the simplest things. They would walk for hours, sharing their dreams. She wanted to teach children one day, to spread knowledge and hope. He wanted to build a business empire, not for fame, but to prove to himself and the world that he could rise above his beginnings. Life was hard in those days, but they were happy. They ate at small roadside cafes, laughed at silly jokes, and sometimes just sat silently, enjoying each other's company. When Armin was too tired after a long day at work, Mehar would bring him tea, telling him gently, "One day, all your hard work will shine. Don't give up." Those words became his fuel. Whenever he felt like giving in to failure, he remembered her faith in him. But as time went on, things began to change. Armin's small efforts slowly grew into bigger opportunities. He worked day and night, hardly sleeping, chasing contracts, building contacts, and fighting to establish his name. His world became a whirlwind of meetings and deadlines. At first, Mehar understood. She encouraged him, telling him she was proud. But slowly, the distance between them grew. Their walks became rare, their conversations shorter. When they did meet, Armin often seemed distracted, his phone buzzing constantly with business calls. Armin, she had told him one evening, you are building a future, but where do I stand in it? He had been tired that night, his mind full of numbers and deals. Mehar, please understand. Everything I'm doing is for us. Once I succeed, we'll have the life we always dreamed of. Her eyes had filled with tears, but she had forced a smile. Just don't forget, Armin, dreams are not only about money. Sometimes all we need is time with the people we love. He had promised her that night he wouldn't forget. But promises are easy when spoken, harder when tested. Months passed. Armin's business grew, but so did the gap between them. Mehar tried to hold on, but she often felt invisible in his world. She didn't want wealth, she wanted him, his time, his laughter, his love. But he was slipping away, step by step. The final break had come on a rainy evening. Armin had missed her birthday dinner because of an important investor meeting. He had rushed to her small apartment later with flowers in his hand, expecting her to forgive him as always. But that night, Mehar was different. She had stood by the window, her eyes red from crying. Armin, she whispered, I don't recognize you anymore. You're here, but you're not with me. You love your dreams, your success, more than you love me. He had dropped the flowers on the table, shocked. That's not true. Everything I'm doing is for us, Mehar. Can't you see? She shook her head slowly. Maybe one day, you'll realize that love is not about what you can buy or achieve. It's about being there. And you're never really here. Her words cut him deeply, but his pride stopped him from begging her to stay. He had simply stood there in silence, hoping she would change her mind. But she hadn't. That night, she walked away, and with her, a part of his soul left too. For years afterward, Armin told himself she was fine. He imagined her teaching in a school somewhere, living a simple but happy life. It was the only way he could ease his guilt. He never went searching, because maybe he was afraid of what he would find. But tonight, after seeing her on the street, that fragile image had shattered. The truth was harsher than anything he had imagined. Armin buried his face in his hands. The empire he had built now felt like sand slipping through his fingers. What was the point of success if the person who once gave him the courage to dream had fallen so low? The past weighed heavily on him, but one thought grew stronger with every passing second. He could not change what happened before, but he could change what came next. And this time, he would not fail her. The next morning, Armin could not focus on anything. His phone kept ringing with calls from partners and investors, but his mind was far away. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Mehar's face from the night before, tired, pale, and filled with quiet pain. He had waited years to see her again, and when he finally did, she was living a life she never deserved. By evening, he decided he could not sit still anymore. He left his office early, ignoring the confused looks of his staff. For once, business could wait. He asked his driver to take the same road as yesterday. His heart pounded as the car slowed near the bakery corner. She was there. Mehar sat in the same spot, hugging her shawl tightly as the wind grew colder. She looked even weaker than yesterday, as though she had not eaten all day. Armin's chest tightened. Without thinking, he stepped out of the car and walked toward her. This time, she noticed him immediately. Her eyes widened slightly, then narrowed. You again, she said quietly, her voice hoarse. Armin nodded, trying to stay calm. Yes. I came to see you. Please, Mehar, let me talk to you. She looked away, her pride still protecting her like a shield. There's nothing left to say, Armin. Our story ended long ago. He sat down on the pavement beside her, ignoring the expensive suit he wore. People walking by slowed down to watch, surprised to see a billionaire sitting next to a homeless woman. But Armin did not care. "Our story never ended," he said softly. "It just broke in the middle. And I can't walk away now, not after seeing you like this." For the first time, her eyes softened, though her lips stayed firm. "Why now? Why after all these years? Do you think you can walk back into my life like nothing happened?" Her words hurt, but Armin didn't flinch. "I know I hurt you. I know I wasn't there when you needed me the most. I was blind, Mehar. I thought success was everything. But last night I realized I was wrong. None of it matters without you." Mehar let out a shaky breath. "Do you know what it feels like to wait for someone who never comes back? To believe in someone so much that when they leave, you lose yourself completely." Her voice cracked, and tears filled her eyes. Armin's throat tightened. He wanted to wipe her tears but held himself back. "I can't change the past. I can only ask for another chance now. Let me take you away from here. Let me help you, even if you never forgive me." She shook her head, pulling her shawl tighter. "I don't want pity. I don't want to be some forgotten memory you suddenly decided to fix. I built my life on my own once, and I'll survive this too." Her pride made Armin admire her even more, but it also broke him. "It's not pity, Mehar. It's love. It always was." His voice trembled as he continued. "Do you know what kept me going during my hardest days? Your words. Your faith in me. You were my reason to fight. And now, when you're the one struggling, how can I walk away?" Silence hung between them. The street noises faded, and all that remained was the sound of her quiet breathing. Finally, Mehar whispered, "You speak of love, Armin. But where was that love when I needed you? When I cried myself to sleep waiting for you to show up, when I begged you just to give me one evening, when I told you I felt invisible? Where were you then?" Armin closed his eyes, guilt washing over him. "I was blind. I thought building a future was enough. But what is a future without the person you want to share it with? I failed you, Mehar. I failed us." Her tears rolled down, but she quickly brushed them away, as if ashamed to show weakness. "Words are easy, Armin. But the scars are real. The nights were real. The loneliness was real." He reached out slowly, his hand hovering near hers. "I don't ask you to forget the pain. I just ask for one chance to heal it. One chance to stand by you, the way you once stood by me." She looked at him then, truly looked at him. The man sitting beside her was no longer the boy with big dreams. He was older, wealthier, but his eyes held the same fire she had once fallen for. And now, there was something new: regret. Deep, undeniable regret. For a moment, her heart wavered. But her pride rose again, whispering warnings. "Even if I believe you, Armin, even if I accept your help, what then? Can you promise that life won't repeat itself? That I won't be left behind again?" Armin's voice was firm now. "I can't promise life will be perfect. But I can promise that I will never leave you behind again. Not as long as I live." Her lips parted, but no words came out. She was caught between her wounded heart and the love she still carried deep inside. The sound of a car horn broke the moment, pulling her back to reality. She stood up quickly, adjusting her shawl. "I need time," she said firmly. "Don't come here every day, Armin. Don't make this harder for me." Armin rose too, his eyes full of desperation. "Take all the time you need. But please, don't shut me out. Let me prove myself." She walked away slowly, her figure fading into the shadows of the street. Armin stood still, his chest heavy but hopeful. For the first time in years, He had spoken his heart to her. And though she had not accepted him, she had not fully rejected him either. As he returned to his car, Armin whispered to himself, I lost her once because of my pride. I won't lose her again because of my silence. And with that, he promised himself he would do whatever it took to bring her back, not just into his life, but into a life where she never had to feel abandoned again. The days that followed were restless for Armin. No matter how many meetings he attended, no matter how many deals were signed, his mind never stayed in the boardroom. It always wandered back to the street corner where Mehar sat, wrapped in her shawl, hiding her pain from the world. He wanted to rush to her every day, to bring her food, shelter, and comfort. But her words still echoed in his ears, don't make this harder for me. He understood her pride. She had always been strong, always determined to stand on her own. If he forced his help on her, she would push him away even further. And so, he made a quiet decision he would help her, but from a distance. She would never know it was him. The first step was food. That night, Armin instructed one of his trusted workers to deliver warm meals to the bakery corner every evening. He told them to act as if it was part of a charity program. When the first tray of food was placed in front of her, Mehar looked confused. She hesitated but finally accepted it, whispering a soft thank you to the stranger. From a car parked far away, Armin watched with a heavy heart. The second step was safety. He hired a man to keep an eye on the area, to make sure no harm came to her. The streets could be cruel, and Armin could not sleep at night knowing she was alone out there. Despite all this, he still longed to talk to her again. But whenever he approached, Mehar's eyes warned him not to push too hard. She spoke little, and though her tone was not as sharp as before, she still kept a distance. One evening, he decided to try again. He walked toward her slowly, carrying nothing but his sincerity. Mehar, he said gently, are you eating well? You look weaker than before. She glanced at him briefly, then looked away. I eat enough to stay alive. Don't worry about me. But I do worry, he said softly. I can't stop myself. Her hands tightened around her shawl. You don't need to. I've learned to take care of myself. Whatever life throws at me, I'll survive. Armin sighed. He admired her strength, but it also hurt him. Surviving is not the same as living, Mehar. You deserve more than just survival. She gave him a small, tired smile. And what if I don't want more? What if I just want peace? Money, comfort, luxury, none of it matters if the heart is empty. Her words struck him deeply. He knew she was speaking from pain, from scars that had never healed. For a moment, neither spoke. The street lights flickered above them, casting long shadows on the ground. Finally, Armin said, if I could turn back time, I would choose differently. I would choose you, every single day. Mehar's eyes shimmered, but she quickly turned away. Regrets don't change the past, Armin. They just remind us of what we lost. Armin wanted to argue, to tell her that regrets could build a new future if she allowed them. But he held back, afraid to push her further. That night, after leaving her side, he made another decision. He instructed his assistant to arrange a small apartment in a quiet area of the city. He asked them to prepare it with simple furniture, nothing extravagant, nothing that would make Mehar feel out of place. He wanted her to have a safe space, a place where she could rest, without ever knowing it was his doing. But when the assistant approached Mehar with the offer, saying it was part of a housing program, she refused. No, she said firmly. I don't want charity. There are others who need it more than me. The assistant tried to persuade her, but her pride was stronger than her hunger, stronger than her exhaustion. She shook her head and walked away. When Armin heard of her refusal, he closed his eyes and exhaled heavily. He understood. That was Mehar. The same woman who once refused expensive gifts when they were young, saying, "I don't need things, Armin. I just need you." And now, even when she had nothing, she still chose dignity over comfort. Days turned into weeks, and Armin continued his quiet support. He arranged for clothes to be left at the bakery corner, again under the name of charity. Sometimes she accepted, sometimes she shared them with others on the street. He watched from afar, both proud of her kindness and pained by her suffering. One night, as he sat in his car nearby, his driver asked carefully, "Sir, forgive me for speaking, but why don't you just take her with you? Why watch from the shadows?" Armin looked out at the fragile figure sitting under the streetlight. His voice was low, heavy with emotion. "Because if I force her, I'll lose her again. And this time, I can't afford to lose her." The driver nodded quietly, understanding the depth of his master's struggle. That night, as Armin drove away, he realized something. No matter how much she resisted, no matter how much her pride stood in the way, he could not give up. Love was not about winning or losing. It was about standing by someone, even when they pushed you away. And deep in his heart, Armin knew there would come a day when Mehar's pride would break, not out of weakness, but out of exhaustion. And when that day came, he would be there. Not as a billionaire, not as a man full of regrets, but as the Armin she had once loved. For now, he would wait. And waiting, he realized, was also a form of love. The winter had grown colder, and the nights in the city were harsh. Mehar, wrapped in her worn shawl, struggled to keep herself warm. Her body ached, her throat was sore, and a cough had begun to linger, worsening with each passing day. Yet, her pride would not allow her to ask for help. She survived through sheer willpower, determined not to become a burden, even when the bitter cold and hunger made her weak. Armin, meanwhile, watched from afar. Every day, he observed her from a distance, his heart tightening as he saw her shiver and struggle. The food, the clothes, and the safety measures he had arranged helped, but he knew it was not enough. The warmth of a home, the care of someone who truly loved her, these were things she desperately needed, and she would not accept them willingly. One evening, Armin drove by and saw something that made his chest tighten painfully. Mehar had collapsed near the corner of the bakery. Her face was pale, and her body trembled. The shawl that once wrapped her now barely protected her from the biting wind. She coughed harshly, struggling to breathe. Armin jumped out of the car, running toward her. "Mehar," he shouted, his voice cracking. She lifted her eyes weakly and tried to smile. "I'm fine, just a little cold," she whispered. "No, you're not fine," Armin said firmly, lifting her gently into his arms. The people around stared, some whispering in surprise, but Armin ignored them. His only focus was her. Her body felt fragile, almost like it could break with the slightest movement. Where are you taking me?" Mehar asked, her voice trembling. "To a place where you can rest. You need care, Mehar. You cannot stay here any longer," he said softly. Her pride made her resist even in weakness. "I don't need your help. I can manage," she whispered, shaking her head. Armin looked into her tired eyes, his own filled with tears. "No, Mehar. You've managed alone for too long. Please, just trust me this once." Her body was too weak to argue further. She allowed him to carry her to the car, her head resting on his chest. For Armin, every second of holding her was both terrifying and relieving. She was alive, but she was vulnerable, and he knew he could not let her go again. The car drove through the quiet streets, heading to a small apartment Armin had arranged for her weeks ago. He had kept it ready, furnished simply, warm, and safe. Nothing extravagant, nothing that would make her feel out of place. He had hoped she would come willingly, but circumstances had forced her hand. When they arrived, Armin gently laid her on the sofa. "Rest here, Mehar. I'll get you something warm to drink," he said. She shook her head weakly. "You don't have to," she murmured, but her voice was too weak to hold any real resistance. Armin smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I want to." He brought her warm tea, wrapped in a thick blanket. Mehar sipped slowly, the warmth spreading through her body. For the first time in weeks, she felt safe. The apartment was quiet, warm, and clean. It smelled faintly of herbs and fresh bread, small comforts that made her heart ache in a strange way. Armin sat beside her, careful not to overwhelm her. "You don't have to thank me," he said quietly. "I just want you to get better. That's all I care about." She looked at him, eyes filled with pain and a hint of shame. I didn't want to accept help," she admitted softly. "I thought I had to survive on my own." Armin took her hand gently. "There is nothing wrong with accepting help from someone who cares. You're not weak, Mehar. You're human. And humans need care sometimes." Tears welled up in her eyes. She had been so proud, so stubborn, so determined to survive alone. But now, as she looked at him, the same man who had once promised to be by her side, she realized that letting go of pride could be the first step toward healing. For hours, they sat in silence, broken only by her soft coughs and the occasional sip of tea. Armin remained by her side, offering comfort without words, holding her hand lightly, and keeping her warm. By the next morning, Mehar had regained some strength. Her body still ached, but the warmth of the apartment and Armin's quiet care had made a difference. She looked around, taking in the simple, safe surroundings. For the first time in months, she felt hope stirring inside her. Armin noticed the small change. He smiled softly, though his heart still carried the weight of the past. "You're going to be all right, Mehar. I promise you that," he said quietly. She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. I think I forgot what it feels like to feel safe," she admitted. "You never have to feel unsafe again," Armin said gently. "I'll make sure of that." For the first time since he had seen her on the street, Armin felt a sense of relief. The breaking point had come, forcing Mehar to accept help. And though her pride had resisted for so long, he knew this was the first step toward healing, not just for her body, but for both of their hearts. And as she rested in the apartment, wrapped in warmth and care, Armin silently vowed that he would never allow her to face the world alone again. The sun rose slowly over the city, casting a warm glow across the apartment where Mehar now rested. For the first time in weeks, she had slept without shivering, without hunger pressing on her chest, without the cold biting at her bones. The apartment was quiet, safe, and warm, a world away from the streets she had called home. Armin watched her sleep from across the room. His heart ached and swelled at the same time. She looked peaceful, fragile, yet still full of the quiet strength he had always admired. He remembered the girl who had once stood by him when he had nothing, and now, she was lying here in a place he had created to keep her safe. Mehar stirred, opening her eyes slowly. When she saw Armin sitting nearby, her first instinct was to hide her vulnerability behind a small smile. "Morning," she whispered softly. "Good morning," Armin replied gently. "How are you feeling?" "A little better," she admitted. "Thanks, for everything." Her voice was quiet, sincere, and without the usual edge of pride. Armin shook his head. "No thanks are needed. I just want you to be safe and healthy." He paused for a moment, his gaze locking with hers. "Mehar, can we talk?" She hesitated, then nodded. There was a vulnerability in her eyes that he had not seen in years. It made him both nervous and hopeful. I need to say something," he began, choosing each word carefully. "Years ago, I lost you. I let my ambition blind me. I thought building a future meant everything, but it doesn't mean anything without the person you love beside you. I failed you, Mehar. I'm sorry. Truly sorry. Her lips trembled. She had expected many things from him, but not this raw honesty. Armin. I never stopped loving you, she admitted quietly, the words almost breaking through her pride. Even when I walked away, even when I struggled alone, a part of me stayed with you. But I was hurt, deeply hurt. Armin felt tears sting his eyes. He reached out, holding her hand gently. I know, and I can never take away the pain of the past. But I can promise this: I will never leave you again. I will stand by you, through everything, if you let me. Mehar's eyes glistened with tears. Her pride wavered, replaced by the love she had buried deep inside. I don't know if I can trust again, she whispered, voice shaking. I've lived so long protecting myself, afraid to rely on anyone. Armin squeezed her hand. You can trust me. I'll prove it, every day, for as long as you let me. No more mistakes. No more leaving you behind. The tears she had held back for so long began to fall. Slowly, she leaned her head on his shoulder. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to be vulnerable. Armin held her gently, letting her cry, letting her release the pain she had carried alone for too long. Days turned into weeks. With Armin's care and support, Mehar regained her strength. Her body healed, but more importantly, her heart began to heal as well. She started to smile again, the kind of smile that had once lit up Armin's world. The apartment, once unfamiliar and strange, became a home filled with warmth, laughter, and hope. Armin never pushed her. He let her pace the journey of trust and love. He cooked meals with her, watched old movies, and took long walks in the park, just like they had done in their youth. Slowly, walls built from pain and pride crumbled. She began to open her heart again, not just to him, but to life itself. One evening, as the city lights twinkled below, Mehar looked at Armin. Do you remember when we used to dream about the future? Do you remember what we promised each other? Armin smiled softly. Of course. We promised to be together, to support each other, to never give up, no matter what life threw at us. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I think we can start that promise again. I've been afraid for so long, but now I want to try. Armin held her close, feeling a wave of relief and happiness wash over him. Yes, Mehar. We'll start again. No past, just the present and the future. Together. From that moment, their lives changed. The empire Armin had built continued to grow, but now it was not just for him. It was for the life they would share together, a life full of love, care, and mutual support. Mehar pursued her dream of teaching children, inspiring them, and spreading hope, the same dream she had once set aside while struggling to survive. Armin supported her quietly, proudly, every step of the way. Months later, as they walked hand in hand through the park, Mehar looked at Armin, her eyes shining with gratitude and love. I never thought I would feel safe and loved again. Thank you, for never giving up on me. Armin smiled, squeezing her hand gently. You never gave up on yourself either. That's why I could never give up on you. We're stronger together now, Mehar. And this time, nothing will tear us apart. The city buzzed around them, full of people chasing dreams, running errands, living ordinary lives. But for Armin and Mehar, the world had narrowed down to this one truth: love, when nurtured and healed, could overcome even the deepest pain. And as the sun set, casting golden light over the park, they walked side by side, hearts mended, scars acknowledged but no longer controlling them, and a future bright with hope and second chances stretching before them. For the first time in years, both felt complete.